Good evening, friends, and welcome back to the channel. Tonight we're going deep into a story that begins with the kind of warmth and companionship we all crave, but quickly descends into a chilling struggle for survival. It's a story that will make you question the very nature of trust, the unseen dangers that can lurk in the most intimate corners of our lives, and how sometimes the greatest love can inadvertently lead to the gravest threat. This isn't just about a woman and her dog. It's about a bond so profound it nearly became fatal, and a truth so shocking it was only revealed by doctors after months of quiet terror. Imagine, if you will, the comfort of a pet. The soft fur, the rhythmic breathing, the undeniable warmth beside you in bed. For Julia, this was her nightly ritual, a cherished comfort that brought peace to her bustling life. She slept every night with her dog, a beautiful German Shepherd mix named Bronx. He was her shadow, her confidant, her furry protector. He was, in every sense of the word, family. But what Julia didn't know, what she couldn't possibly know, was that this comforting nightly ritual, this innocent act of love, was slowly, imperceptibly stealing her life away. The journey to that terrifying truth began, as many profound stories do, with an impulse. Julia hadn't planned on getting a dog that particular day. She was just, as the saying goes, looking. We've all been there, haven't we? A casual browse, a fleeting thought, and suddenly you're standing on the precipice of a life-altering decision. For Julia, it was a crisp autumn afternoon, and the local animal shelter was having an adoption event. She'd always loved dogs, but her demanding job and small apartment had always seemed like insurmountable obstacles. Yet something drew her there. Perhaps it was the promise of connection in a world that often felt increasingly disconnected. Perhaps it was a quiet yearning for unconditional love. The shelter was a cacophony of barks and whines, a symphony of hopeful desperation. Julia walked through the kennels, her heart aching for every pair of pleading eyes she met. But then she saw him. Tucked away in a quiet corner at the very back of a row was a large wire crate. Inside, curled into a tight ball, was a young German Shepherd. He wasn't barking, wasn't jumping, wasn't vying for attention like the others. He lay almost motionless, his head resting on his paws, his breathing shallow. His eyes, though, were what captivated her. Dark, intelligent, and filled with an ancient weariness that seemed far too profound for such a young creature. They were like deep, still pools reflecting a quiet resignation. The tag on his cage read, Bronx, and below that a chilling detail, last one, shelter closing in 3 days. A cold dread gripped Julia. This wasn't just a dog, this was a forgotten soul staring down the barrel of an uncertain future. He was the last one, the overlooked, the one whose time was running out. In that moment, something shifted within Julia. It wasn't pity, not entirely. It was a fierce protective instinct, a sudden undeniable connection that transcended logic. When she knelt down, eye level with his cage, Bronx slowly lifted his head. Eyes met hers, and though he made no sound, no discernible movement beyond that quiet gaze, Julia swore she heard a silent plea clear as a bell, "Take me with you." And just like that, her life and Bronx's changed forever. The drive home was quiet. Bronx lay in the backseat, a large, calm presence. He didn't whine or fidget, just watched the passing world with that same attentive silence. Julia found herself talking to him, murmuring reassurances, already feeling the protective bond forming. She knew deep down this wasn't just a pet, this was a soulmate in the making. Bringing Bronx into her apartment was a gentle dance of discovery. He didn't barrel through the door, sniffing wildly. Instead, he moved with a deliberate, almost cautious grace. He explored every room, every corner, every shadow, not with fear, but with a quiet, methodical curiosity. Julia watched him, fascinated. He wasn't anxious, he was simply aware. He absorbed his new environment, cataloging every scent, every sound, every detail. He seemed to be mapping out his new world, and in doing so, he was mapping out a new space in Julia's heart. Quickly, Julia realized that Bronx wasn't just an animal living in her home, he was a presence, an observer. He seemed to study her. He'd watch her movements, track her across the room, follow the rhythm of her daily life. He'd pick up on her moods, her energy, even the subtle changes in her breathing. If she was stressed, he'd settle quietly nearby. If she was happy, his tail would give a soft, almost imperceptible thump on the floor. He ate his meals calmly, responded to commands with intelligent precision, and at night he'd settle onto his own cozy blanket at the foot of her bed. It was the perfect arrangement, or so she thought. But as the days turned into weeks, a subtle change began to unfold. It started innocently enough. One morning, Julia found a single paw print, barely visible, pressed into the duvet at the very edge of her bed. A silent invitation, perhaps. She smiled, thinking it sweet. The next night, she felt a soft nudge against her back. Bronx, ever so gently, had moved from his blanket to lie on the floor beside her bed, his large body pressed against the mattress. The warmth was comforting, a solid presence in the quiet of the night. Then the migration truly began. Each night a little closer. First a leg, then his entire flank, then the full weight of his body. He moved with such stealth, such quiet determination that Julia would often wake up to find him there, a warm, heavy sentinel pressed against her back. After just a few days, Bronx was no longer at the foot of her bed or even beside it. He was on the bed, curled up right beside her, his head sometimes resting on her stomach, sometimes on her leg. Julia at first found it endearing. It was sweet, almost human. She relished the warmth, the closeness, the comforting presence that chased away any lingering feelings of being alone. This big, gentle dog who had come from such a desolate place had found his refuge with her, and in doing so had become her refuge too. It was a beautiful symbiosis, a testament to the power of love between human and animal. But somewhere beneath the surface of this idyllic companionship, something was amiss. Something was subtly, almost imperceptibly wrong. Bronx quickly became the undisputed center of Julia's universe. He was gentle, understanding, responding to her every gesture, her every word with an almost uncanny intuition. It was as if he knew what she needed even before she knew herself. If she was about to reach for her keys, he'd be at the door. If she sighed in frustration, he'd nuzzle her hand. He rarely left her side, not when she brushed her teeth, not when she cooked, not even if she just stepped into the hallway for a moment. He was her constant shadow, her faithful companion, and at night his quiet devotion intensified. He didn't just lie beside her anymore. He actively sought her body, positioning himself deliberately. His head would rest squarely on her stomach, his chest pressed firmly against her back like a second living blanket, like a second heartbeat echoing her own. At first, Julia found this incredibly soothing. It evoked a primal sense of security, a feeling of being protected, cherished. It was like those heavy, comforting blankets she'd had as a child, warding off the monsters under the bed. The weight was grounding, the warmth absolute. But soon, the comfort began to morph almost imperceptibly into something else entirely, something unsettling. This is where our story takes a turn, my friends. This is where the subtle threads of warmth and companionship begin to fray, revealing a chilling pattern beneath. This is where the love, so pure and innocent, unknowingly opened the door to a lurking darkness. The first symptoms arrived stealthily, like whispers in the night. Julia began to wake up feeling utterly drained, as if she hadn't slept a wink despite hours spent in bed. Her energy levels plummeted. Her appetite waned, replaced by a vague, persistent nausea. Her stomach began to rumble with an alarming frequency, and dull, aching pains would come and go, like waves crashing softly against a distant shore. Sometimes more, sometimes less, but always there. She dismissed them as we so often do. Stress, she thought, maybe a touch of stomach flu or just the unpredictable changes in the weather. She Googled her symptoms, fell down rabbit holes of self-diagnosis, then quickly closed the tabs, convincing herself she was just feeling a bit run down. We all do it, don't we? We rationalize, we explain away because the alternative, the truly frightening alternative, is too overwhelming to consider. But the truth was, her body was slowly, meticulously retreating. And as Julia grew weaker, Bronx grew more intense. His presence at night was no longer just a comfort, it was a constant, almost immovable weight. Not heavy in a crushing sense, but persistent. Like a stone that you carry for so long, you eventually forget it's there, until one day you realize you can no longer stand up straight. His eyes, Julia noticed with a growing unease, seemed to remain open at night, fixed on her in the dim light. His proximity became unyielding, unwavering, no matter how she shifted or turned. It was then that she felt it truly for the first time. The closeness no longer brought solace. It brought a creeping, suffocating sense of wrongness. Julia found herself struggling to concentrate during simple conversations. Her gaze would become unfocused, her thoughts sluggish, like a thick syrup refusing to pour. She forgot appointments, mixed up times, and would stare blankly at empty pages for minutes on end, her mind a frustrating blank. Then came the tingling, a strange, insistent sensation, first on her shoulders, then spreading to her hips. It wasn't superficial, not an itch she could simply scratch away. It felt deeper, beneath the skin, an internal hum that left her increasingly agitated. And then one night she woke with a jolt. Not from a dream, not from a noise, but from an undeniable, terrifying sensation. Something in her abdomen moved, not a rumble, not a twitch, but a distinct slow glide, a subtle shifting beneath her skin. It wasn't much, just a soft internal slide, but it was enough. Enough to flood her with a primal, visceral fear that froze her blood. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She lay absolutely still, barely breathing, straining to hear, to feel it again. Was she imagining things? Was it her own imagination, fueled by exhaustion and anxiety, playing cruel tricks? She tried to rationalize it away, but the memory of that internal movement, that slow, deliberate glide, was etched into her mind. And then she looked at Bronx. He was, as always, pressed against her back, his head on her stomach. His eyes were open, fixed on her face in the gloom, an unsettling intensity in their depths. In that moment, a chilling thought, a whisper of dread, began to form in the deepest recesses of her mind. What if this wasn't just her body failing? What if it was connected to him? Because Bronx, too, had begun to change. He was eating less, his usually calm demeanor replaced by an intermittent restlessness. He started having bouts of diarrhea, and most disturbingly, he began to scratch himself incessantly, almost violently, always in the same few spots on his flank and neck. Sometimes he would look at her with his head cocked, those intelligent, dark eyes seeming to hold a desperate message, something he knew, something he desperately needed to communicate but couldn't. The image of that internal movement, combined with Bronx's sudden, mirroring deterioration, slammed into Julia with the force of a physical blow. The unspoken connection, the shared decline, it was too much to ignore. This was no longer just stress or a passing ailment. This was something far more sinister, far more intertwined. What was happening to them both and why, she had to find out. She had to. Julia first went to her family doctor. Standard blood work and ultrasound, the usual battery of questions about stress levels and diet. Perhaps stress, the doctor had mused, noncommittally prescribing rest and suggesting a follow-up. But the answers felt hollow, incomplete. Her intuition, dulled by fatigue but still stubbornly present, screamed that something fundamental was being missed. With her own health in limbo and Bronx's condition worsening rapidly, Julia knew she couldn't wait. The excessive scratching, the lethargy, the digestive issues, they were becoming alarming. She made an urgent appointment with the vet. The atmosphere in the veterinary clinic was a stark contrast to the human doctor's office. Here there was less abstraction, more immediate, tangible evidence. The vet, a no-nonsense woman with kind but piercing eyes, examined Bronx thoroughly. She took samples, asked precise questions about his diet, his habits, his recent adoption. Julia recounted their story. The quiet dog from the closing shelter, their deepening bond, his gradual move into her bed, the increasing closeness. She even hesitantly mentioned her own vague symptoms and the unsettling feeling of movement inside her. The vet listened patiently, her expression unreadable. Then came the moment of truth. The vet returned from the lab, her face a mixture of professional calm and grave concern. She looked at Julia, then at Bronx, then back at Julia. "Vet asterisk Julia," she began, her voice low and even, "the diagnosis for Bronx is clear and it's serious. He has a severe case of tapeworms, a very particular kind actually, they're called asterisk Echinococcus granulosus asterisk." Julia felt a chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. Tapeworms, she'd heard of them, of course, a common enough ailment for dogs, but the vet's tone, the way she emphasized very particular kind, sent a ripple of unease through her. "Vet asterisk, these aren't the common garden variety tapeworms, Julia. This parasite is quite rare in urban settings, typically found in rural areas where dogs come into contact with wild animals, especially sheep or deer. What's crucial to understand is that it's a zoonotic parasite, meaning it's transmittable to humans." The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Zoonotic, transmittable to humans. Julia's mind raced back to her own symptoms, the exhaustion, the stomach pains, the deep, unscratchable itch, the feeling of asterisk movement inside her. The pieces of the terrifying puzzle began to snap into place with a horrifying clarity. "Vet asterisk, and given Bronx's history, and what you've told me about your living situation, your close physical proximity." The vet paused, her gaze steady, almost regretful. "Especially sleeping together, sharing a bed, Julia, you need to get tested immediately. For Echinococcus." In that moment, as the vet looked at her, that brief, factual glance over the rim of her glasses, Julia knew. She didn't need a blood test, didn't need a medical diagnosis. She already knew she wasn't just sick. She was occupied. The word echoed in her mind, occupied. It wasn't just an infection, it was an invasion. A parasitic entity silently, methodically building its home within her. The diagnosis hit Julia like a punch to the gut, stealing her breath. She had never, not in her wildest nightmares, imagined that the profound love and comforting closeness she shared with her beloved dog could ever put her life in such grave danger. The irony was brutal, the betrayal, though unintentional, utterly devastating. But this was no time for doubt, no space for guilt or self-pity. The reality was stark, immediate, and terrifying. The veterinarian, now in full crisis mode, explained the gravity of the situation. Echinococcus granulosus in humans could lead to hydatid cysts, often forming in the liver and lungs, sometimes even the brain, growing slowly, silently destroying tissue and potentially proving fatal if untreated. Vet asterisk Julia, we need to act fast. A double treatment, immediate and aggressive for both you and Bronx, is the only chance we have. These aren't simple durmers. The medications are potent, their side effects can be severe, but every day counts. Julia didn't hesitate for a second. Fear, though present, was dwarfed by a fierce, instinctual will to survive and an unwavering commitment to save Bronx too. He was a part of her and they would face this together. She called her doctor, who, once informed of the highly specific diagnosis, understood the urgency. The wheels of specialized medical care began to turn with dizzying speed. That very same day, Julia and Bronx began their parallel therapies. For Bronx, it involved a series of powerful antiparasitic injections and oral medication. For Julia, it was a regimen of potent drugs, a chemical warfare waged within her own body. The weeks that followed blurred into a brutal, grueling battle for survival. Julia lay feverish in her bed, her body racked with pain and nausea, fighting with every ounce of strength against the insidious invader that had taken root within her. The side effects of the medication were relentless, profound fatigue, stomach cramps, headaches that pounded behind her eyes. Yet through it all, Bronx never left her side. He lay there on his blanket beside her bed, sometimes venturing onto the mattress, as if understanding the unspoken agreement that their previous closeness was now a dangerous memory. He too was receiving daily injections, undergoing his own quiet battle, even though miraculously his outward symptoms seemed to lessen far quicker than hers. He had been the unwitting vector, the silent carrier, but now he was her fellow warrior. It was a silent bond between them, stronger than pain, stronger than fear, forged in the crucible of their shared suffering. And ironically, it was this very bond, the one that had so nearly led to Julia's demise, that now became her anchor, her quiet strength, her ultimate salvation. When she felt too weak to move, too sick to even open her eyes, she would reach out and feel the reassuring warmth of his fur, a tangible connection to the living world, a promise that they would get through this. Slowly, painstakingly, Julia's strength began to return. Her thoughts, once so muddy and fragmented, became clearer, sharper. Her body, once heavy and leaden, felt lighter, less oppressed. The pallor of her skin began to fade, replaced by a faint blush of returning health. The tingling stopped. The internal movement ceased. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, came the day of her last comprehensive examination. The results came back negative. The infection was completely, irrevocably vanquished. The parasite was gone. Julia didn't cry tears of sadness or relief alone. She wept tears of profound gratitude, of exhaustion finally releasing its grip, of the sheer, overwhelming joy of being given a second chance at life. She sat up in bed, her body still weak but her spirit soaring, and called Bronx to her. He came, his tail giving a gentle thump-thump against the floor, and she wrapped her arms around his furry neck, holding him tighter than she ever had before. He had almost killed her, yes, but only because she had loved him so profoundly, so unreservedly. And now, in this quiet, powerful embrace, it was he who, by enduring his own treatment and remaining steadfast by her side, reminded her how to be fully alive again. It was a love complicated by danger, purified by fear, and ultimately strengthened by survival. Since that terrifying ordeal, Bronx was, once again, allowed to sleep with Julia. But this time, it was different. Not out of unconscious habit or innocent unawareness, but out of a deep abiding trust, a conscious choice born of their shared ordeal. The knowledge of what they had faced and overcome infused their bond with a profound resilience. And Julia knew the whole world might have seen a viral video of an adorable dog in a bed, but only she knew the chilling truth. Sometimes life and the deep, inexplicable love we have for our animals writes the most moving, and indeed, the most terrifying stories. What Julia experienced is a stark reminder of how vitally important attention, intuition, and knowing when to question even the most innocent comforts truly are. It's a testament to the fact that even in our deepest connections, there can be unseen forces at play, silent struggles unfolding just beneath the surface. What would you have done in Julia's shoes? Would you have noticed that something was wrong with you or with your cherished companion? Or would you have trusted blindly, dismissing the subtle shifts, the quiet warnings? Tell us in the comments below. We want to hear your thoughts, your own experiences, your questions. If this story touched you, if it gave you pause, please hit that like button, share this video with your friends, and subscribe to the channel for more true, incredible stories that truly get under your skin. Thank you for watching, and never forget, sometimes the truth is sleeping right next to you.